I'm on the board for Birth Choice, which is a local, pro-life pregnancy center. And they got a call one day from somebody who found this girl on the side of the road crying. What had happened was the principal of the school paid for a cab, had the girl dropped off at the abortion center. She didn't go in. She just sat on the curb crying. So a member of the community found her and then brought her to Birth Choice.
My God.
And
that's right. You told me this.
And no trouble. The principal gets in zero trouble. Why? Because it's his responsibility to keep that private for the child. Unbelievable. And the community I live in, because it has been for so long so conservative, the Bible Belt of Southern California, you start telling parents, this is what's happening. You know what the parents say? Not in our school district. Or not at my school. That would never fly. I've talked to the principal. He would never do that.
Wake up.
But these things are absolutely happening in our
now,
community.
You can't get Advil or ibuprofen in a elementary, junior high, or high school, Tim, without parental consent. You can't go on a field trip without parental consent and a signed document.
Unless it's to the abortion center.
You can take a field trip to the abortion center to kill your parent's grandson without parental consent. And not just that, but the high priests of secular progressivism will coach schools on how to ensure that parents don't find out. And my friend Monica Klein has said many times that when she was at Planned Parenthood as a sexual educator, one of the phrases that Planned Parenthood officials and trainers would throw around all the time was the phrase, parents are a barrier to service. And so you began to learn that this is how they view parents as well. And so the question becomes, is if this is happening in conservative Riverside County, then what should we assume is happening in our public schools in Berkeley, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles Unified School District, right? And now we're seeing the ramp up attacks against parents, which is why Attorney General Merrick Garland, who's this pissed off lawyer because he was denied a seat on the highest court in the land by Mitch McConnell, is now labeled parents domestic terrorists who are showing up, yes, angry, but not resorting to violence, but showing up and verbally expressing their outrage and anger at school boards in these viral clips all around the country. Why? For two reasons: the critical race theory they're teaching and the crazy sexual education they're teaching. Those are really the only two reasons why parents are showing up in mass in school boards all around the country right now. Merrick Garland doesn't like that, so he labels them domestic terrorists. What was happening last school year when the shutdowns were still going on and students weren't in school? You had several stories come out from around the country where the teacher was telling students via Skype or Zoom to make sure that the parents weren't in the room. Well, why would you be concerned about that? Because they see the parents as a barrier. And this has been sort of the direction of the left's political attacks and positioning for so many decades, Pastor Tim, as you well know, is that you have to separate children from parents because the family is the foundational building block of the society. It's the smallest political unit. And parents, especially opposite-sex parents in a married relationship, living together in a low-conflict marriage, that increases human flourishing. Children fare best when raised by their married biological parents in a low-conflict home, which means that these children will be less susceptible to the lies of the left's political regime and the political project. And what have been communist regimes' goals always? To get children into state schools, to be indoctrinated with state education, and even encouraging students to whistleblow on their own parents and report them to the communist regime. We're just seeing the small attempts of that, but we're seeing the fast tracking of the consequences of it because we've abdicated for so long. So wild stuff that you and your congregation are exposing.
Yeah, I really couldn't believe it. I mean, as a pastor, like when I became a pastor 18 years ago, and I never thought at that time, like, someday we're going to go undercover and we're going to catch our school district doing these things. Like, I never thought that that's what I would be doing. But the second we found out that these things were happening, I go, we got to get into this next training they're doing, and we got to catch this on film. Why? Because I was trying to tell parents, and they didn't believe me. Like, this is happening. Oh, no, it's not happening. Yes, it's happening. Then we got the film. We went undercover, got the film. They still didn't believe me. I mean, we started to kind of break ground with some other parents, but there was still a vast majority of parents wouldn't believe it was happening. So then we did a FOIA demand on the county board of education to get all the documentation surrounding what they were doing. And what we uncovered with that was that hundreds of thousands of dollars were being spent to have companies come in and train the school district employees how to do this. hundreds of thousands of dollars just in that year, just in that county, and that same company that was doing it across the state. We looked on their website. Wow. They just had training seminars set up. I mean, their calendar was full the whole year, and
because the left does a good job, Pastor Tim, at training their troops. Mm-hmm. Their weapons are well sharpened. Their troops are well trained.
Right.
And what would make their day, their greatest hope, their dream, is that those Christians just keep their liturgy in the church.
Right.
You keep your gospel in the church, Christians. You talk about Jesus and worship him all you want, but don't you take that faith out into the public square.
Right.
Don't you begin to contend in the ecclesia. Mm-hmm. Because why? Because then our political project and regime will start being threatened by the mama bears and the papa bears, by the first and most formative influence in the lives of children, the people who created them. And that's the greatest fear of this regime and of this movement. But you also discovered, as we start to wind down here, Pastor Tim, you discovered, it's almost funny, but it's not. It's like it's so blatant that it's hard to not laugh at it. And that is some of the names that these organizations give themselves.
Right.
That when you study it, you're like, are you trying to tell us what you're about and what you're into? But one of those is named Cardia. Right. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys learned about this organization through your work?
Yeah, when we saw all the different invoices, because we did a FOIA demand, and for your viewers that don't know what FOIA is, it's Freedom of Information Act.
That's right.
So the idea is we as citizens have the right to the documentation. That information is ours. We own it. So give us all, we want everything surrounding this. And what we found was all of these invoices to Cardia. What is Cardia? And I looked at the name of it, and it was Cardea. Because I'm thinking it sounds like cardia, like cardio, something to do with heart. Right. And California, healthy. I'm thinking, okay, heart health. Well, I don't know. But that doesn't look right, the spelling. So I looked up Cardia, Cardea, and what I found was that this was an ancient Roman goddess associated with hinged Roman doors. And I'm like, well, hinged Roman doors, what is this about? But the more I looked at what this goddess does, is it controls what's able to come in and come out, and it sets boundaries. So I started looking at what they're doing with the public school system, and they want boundaries. They're like, the public school system is ours. Right. We do not want parents in here. Let's keep them out. And let's set them out. And we are the controlling. We're the hinge on the door. Right. We're going to control what comes into the school, what's allowed in, and you can see that all over their materials. That is the agenda. We're going to control the public school system.
It's almost like an alternative religion, Pastor Tim, with their own deacons and high priests who determine the boundaries of their religion and their orthodoxy and what's allowed in and what's not allowed in. To your point again, we were looking at this earlier, this Cardia goddess, I'll expound more upon what you just said, whose name means door pivot. You said the Roman goddess of door hinges and handles, who prevented evil spirits from crossing thresholds or barriers. Mm-hmm. She was worshipped as the protector of children. Isn't that interesting? Right. So we would read that and maybe come away with a positive view, like the protector of children. Obviously, no small g goddess is any god. It's just there's only Yahweh. But you're that's great, protecting children, especially from evil spirits, and but the left. This is what they do with language. They invert it. Mm-hmm. And this is what the left's been doing for decades. Is they know the power of language to manipulate what they believe is the power to manipulate reality. Right. And so now abortion's reproductive health care and reproductive justice. Now chopping off an 8-year-old's penis because he thinks he's a girl, Pastor Tim. Now, don't you know that's gender affirmation? Right. It's like, whoa, what? Right. And now protecting children is not what we're doing. Right. Oh no, we're the evil spirits, and they're the door hinges preventing us, and they're the barrier preventing the real protectors of children, parents, from getting in and to the schools and getting rid of crazy sexual education that's pornographic. Right. Oh, yeah. And now they see themselves as the protectors of children. And this is what they do. This is how they confuse the American public. So follow the science and all of these phrases. Right. This is why it's so confusing for many Americans who aren't as politically woke and aware of what's going on, because it sounds good. It sounds like, a healthy youth act. Right?
Who doesn't want our kids to be healthy?
Now Newsom just signed a bill that you know of, Pastor Tim, said 12-year-olds and older can now charge abortions to their parents' insurance plans, without parental consent or knowledge. Again, without parental consent or knowledge. Get those pesky parents out of the way.
Right.